they'll pay you as an incentive what they would pay a contract company to move that amount of weight, that amount of distance. So for example, if you're moving from like Norfolk to San Diego and you have 10,000 pounds of weight and that's under your allowance for your pay grade with dependents or whatever, say it costs them $20,000 to pay a company that, they will pay you $20,000 in this made up scenario. You rent a U-Haul, you pack it all up yourself, you pay for the boxes, tape, or you hire a company to do it. So it doesn't have to be all sweat equity in this, but then you get to keep whatever is left over as profit. And I talked about a couple years ago, we have a podcast episode about how I personally made $14,000, I think it was, of profit after expenses for our last PPM. And a couple weeks ago, we decided to do another PPM, and I think we'll make around $10,000 profit from Hawaii to our CONUS location this summer.
Welcome to the Military Money Manual Podcast, where every episode is all about achieving financial independence in the military faster than before. We believe personal finance shouldn't be boring or intimidating. Building wealth can be simple, and financial freedom is the ultimate financial goal. Now, here's your hosts, Spencer and Jamie.
Jamie, if there's one thing that's true for almost all military service members, it's that the only constant is change. And one of the most frequent changes that we have in the military is change of location or change of permanent duty station, also known as PCS, permanent change of station. So 16 years you've been in, and you're coming up on your 7th PCS. And I wanted to just take that opportunity to share with our listeners some tips, some tricks, what you've learned, what I've learned. I did 5 PCSs plus my final move when I left active duty in 2022, 12 years. And just want to reassure the listener that, hey, PCS is stressful. It's challenging. The services don't make it as easy as it could be. For some reason, you don't get orders until the last second, unless you scream and pull rank and make it very obvious to your personnelists that you need your orders. But yeah, for some reason, like, we still don't get our orders. And I mean, I remember when I was a lieutenant, I don't think I got my orders to PCS until like my final out, like the day that I was driving away from one duty station to the next. But welcome back to the Military Money Manual Podcast. Let's talk about how we can help our listeners with their next PCS.
Yeah, so maybe just thinking out loud a little bit here, given some vocal therapy as my family processes the pain of PCSing and the stress that comes with it, the extra cost that comes with it, the confusion over different policies. For example, I'm doing a new type of PCS this time with a TDY en route that somehow I've never experienced in my time. So I'm learning new things about that. And to your comment about getting orders, you know, I fought to get my orders, go there. I don't have my orders yet. They're like, oh, okay, we'll do it. Go back a week later. Oh, that guy's on leave now. Can you do it today? And then that person does it. Then they get published wrong. So I have to go back and get an amendment. Like, I've been there and I know how bad it is. The first thing I want to talk about is just getting organized and keeping your documents together. The first tip for that is having a physical binder and a electronic backup like a Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever your family uses for that. For a couple reasons. As you go to different appointments to out process, you might want like a ton of copies of your physical orders as you hand them to a bunch of different offices. You also might need important documents there physically, like your car registration when you go to drop off your car if you're doing OCONUS to or from. You might need other things like your appointment reminder for the Aloha furniture or your loaner furniture that's coming from your overseas assignment. So there's just a number of things that can be in that binder, make it very easy for you. And then for the digital backup, that way you have it no matter where you are, or worst case, you can email it to yourself, and your spouse, if applicable, also has it available should your binder get lost. So they're both very, very important as you go through the preparation to PCS to have good organized documents, both physically and electronically.
I'm going to double down on that, Jamie. I always had the physical binder where I had collected all my documents. And I got to the point when I filed PCS where I just printed 50 paper copies of my orders because I was tired of printing 10 and then needing 10 more. And then it was it was ridiculous. The other tip or trick that I'll mention is when you do hand someone a physical copy of your orders, ask for their email address and send them a digital copy as well. And that just puts it into their inbox, because a lot of times all they're going to do is take that piece of paper and PDF it so they can get it into whatever system they needed to put it into. And then I think the final tip or trick that I'll mention is, at least in the Air Force, we get these like out processing checklists, and it's like, go to the library and confirm that you've like returned all your books. Guess what? They still let you move if you don't go to the library and confirm that you get all your books. I think that's something I finally learned after 12 years was like, there's a few corners that you can cut. Maybe I can say this because I'm a veteran now, but there's a few corners that you can cut on those out processing checklists. There's a few agencies that I'm going to use my executive power as an officer. And if you're an NCO out there, you can use yours as a non-commissioned officer and just sign yourself off on some of those things. And I'm not going to go talk to, I can't remember what office it was, but there were some funny offices on there. It was like, I don't know where, if I don't know where that office is, I'm not going to talk to them.
Yeah, it's like you have to sign out for being the computer custodian. I'm not a computer custodian, so why do I have to waste my time? I can't officially endorse that view, Spencer. However, it is important to keep organized and sign off all the things as needed. Another way to help you keep organized is by having updated power of attorneys. There are some things that your spouse or a good friend might have to do for you. So as you prepare for a PCS, it's a good time to look through those documents. And that's something that you'll want to hand carry as well as other important documents. You might even want to FedEx some stuff to your new duty station, depending on how far you're traveling. But there are certain things you definitely don't want to let the packers take up, like anything in your safe, your legacy journey, legacy box kind of things that we talked about for estate planning, your kids' birth certificates, your passports, your social security cards, your kids' social security cards, things like that you're going to want to keep with you and make sure early in the process that you have that stuff identified of what is our valuable stuff that we're hand carrying with us and keeping away from the movers. So I know it's stressful, but getting organized early on will definitely help.
Yeah. Jamie, one thing that we've mentioned on previous episodes is as soon as you get those PCS orders or as soon as you start hearing rumors that you might be PCSing soon, one thing we really want to encourage people to do is to start saving up some cash. Just having additional cash, access to liquid money in your checking account can be so valuable. It can be worth far more than the actual dollar amount that's in there, just in terms of like stress management and just being able to know that you're going to be able to get to your next duty station without incurring debt. But a lot of military families are living on a pretty lean budget. So where can they find that extra cash?
Yeah, definitely have a few options. The first thing I would say is it might be an option, and you, as much as it pains me to say this, your best option or your only option might be to reduce your retirement savings maybe to 5% for a couple months just to free up that extra cash. Depending on how much time you have, ideally, you have enough notice to set aside $100 or $200 a month. I mean, you're probably going to PCS after the 2, 3, or 4 year cycle for your assignment, your branch, and your career field. So you should know kind of when it's coming and be able to prepare. But life gets in the way sometimes, and you might not always. You will also have the opportunity to take certain things as an advance. You can do things like your dislocation allowance, which sometimes can be over $1,000 and in some cases multiple thousands of dollars. And that's not a loan. It's an entitlement. It's an allowance that you'll get at the end of your PCS, or you can ask for it up front. And so like in my case, it's something like $3,400 or $3,700. I forget what it is. And that says, we talk about you wanting $5,000 to $10,000 for a PCS, like that could cover a lot of military families' expenses. There's a lot of things that aren't reimbursed. Just today, I booked a rental car as we're getting ready to drop off our car at the VPC. We're doing it 2 days before we fly out. So I'm only doing a rental car for 2 days. We're shipping our other car out of pocket. So that's a not reimbursed cost right now, even though the law says you can PCS 2 cars. They haven't changed the policy yet. So you can still only PCS 1. So we're paying for 1 out of pocket. So that's about $3,000, rental car on each side, all these things that add up. We have the old joke from early podcasts about your new mustard. You're going to have to buy new mustard, and all those expenses start adding up. New spices, new oils, different size decorations. Saving is the best way, and maybe cutting expenses would be the very first recommendation, using the allowance, dislocation allowance. And then if you need to, you can also take an advance on 1 month's pay ahead of time, and you can work with your finance or your S1 to get up to 1 month's pay ahead of time, and then you pay it back over 12 months interest-free.
Your with dependent DLA rate, Jamie, for 2025 as an 05 is $5,339. That's an allowance, so that's tax-free too. So that's
what is it for like an E4 with dependents?
E4 with dependents, $3,400.
So that's a lot of money. That's
a lot of money.
Yeah.
Even a E1, $1,800. I mean, that's like almost that's probably a month's pay after taxes. Like, let's say you're an 03 with dependents, $3,800 this year. So it's a good chunk of change when you PCS, but I would say almost all of that is eaten by costs. Like most people aren't making money off of their dislocation allowance.
But it takes the stress away of those upfront expenses while you're waiting for your voucher, like the new condiments and the rental cars that aren't reimbursed. There are some people that won't be entitled to DLA, like your very first PCS, and I think your very last one as well, for example. But understanding your options and your benefits with DLA and the DLA advance being one of them, to me, I don't see why a military family would not take DLA as an advance. It's not a loan, it's upfront cost. It just helps kind of give you that buffer for the unknowns that are going to come out. Your flight gets delayed, you're in a hotel overnight, your tire pops on your car and you're staying in an extra hotel or changing an extra tire. It's just all that kind of cleanup entitlement kind of stuff.
Yeah, there was only one PCS where we didn't take the advanced DLA. And that was because I was lazy and didn't file the paperwork. We got it once all the PCS paperwork was finalized, but I think it was like 90 days after we completed the PCS. So 100% take the advanced DLA, apply for it, get it. I think it's automatic in some cases now, like the approval, like as long as you submit the paperwork, like a Air Force CMS case, it should be almost automated. So, okay, how can we prepare our family, Jamie, which could be just you and your cat, could just be yourself, family of one. But for some people out there, they've got a spouse, they've got pets, they've got kids. So what can we do to help prepare our family, no matter what size our family is?
It's never going to be easy and it's not going to be perfect. Some of the things that my wife and I try are talking about it in an upbeat manner, making it seem like an adventure that our family's going to do together, that even though we're moving, even though we're leaving friends, we're leaving school, acknowledging that we are sad about some things too, but we're also excited about other things. And some games we play, like, what do you think it'll be, depending on your kid's age, what do you think it'll be like to live in, new city? What kind of friends do you think you might want to try to find or activities might you want to get involved in? What do you do now that you might want to continue to do or try something new? It might be that you take circuitous travel and you do some touring, or instead of going direct from Texas to Washington State, you do a little bit of a detour and hit a couple national parks. And so you build that kind of adventure theme with it. The other thing I mentioned about acknowledging feelings is, like, you have feelings and your spouse has feelings, your kids has feelings, everyone's going to have feelings. So pretending that it's fine and everything's perfect is only going to make people think that their feelings are weird, or they're the only ones that's upset about having to move, the only ones that don't like having to pack up all their gear, the only ones that miss their stuffies for 3 months while their stuff is getting shipped across the world. So just talking through things. And as your kids get older, you're able to even put them in charge of certain things. Like, hey, could you be in charge of packing up, your toys and deciding which ones you want to keep out for the plane ride and for the suitcase? And those expectations of just, hey, we might be eating out a little bit more. We might be eating on the floor. We might only have camping chairs, and just making it kind of like a fun adventure despite all the stress that comes with that time.
Those are all great tips.
Another one to do to help with the family stress is to declutter. So as you move, the more stuff you have and the messier your house is, the harder it's going to be to move all that stuff, especially if you're doing a personally procured move or a PPM or a DITY or a partial DITY is how people call the personally procured moves. And so if you're packing boxes yourself or preparing for the movers to come into your house, if you have a bunch of junk everywhere and you haven't touched stuff in 6 months or 12 months, like I did the hanger trick last year, where if I turned the hanger facing me and it wasn't turned around, then I was done with it. And a lot of my clothes, there's certain ones I like. I'm a very simple man, wear a lot of Costco clothes, straight dad mode right now. And so if it's not comfortable, I don't like it, then I'm not going to wear it. So then I can just get rid of it. And there's a lot of mental tricks that your brain plays just by seeing clutter around the house, and it adds kind of the stress and overwhelming feeling for some people. And if you don't feel that, chances are someone in your family, your spouse, your kids probably do feel overwhelmed by clutter.
Yeah, we read Marie Kondo's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up book, and she has this strategy where basically like you just like touch an object, and if you like feel like joy, you keep it, and if you do like feel nothing, you just get rid of it. And that was something that we applied every time we PCS'd. And we still do to this day when we move. We tried to make sure, same thing, Jamie, like for clothes, if we haven't used it for the last 12 months, it's probably time to donate it. And for items, and I mean, I'm just looking around in my office right now, and there's probably things in here that it's like, if that went missing, I wouldn't notice, right? The other trick too is if we put it into a storage unit, and then when we go to the storage unit a couple months later, like, oh, I forgot this was here. It's probably time to get rid of it.
If you have a storage unit, probably time to get rid of it. The other trick that we do that's a funnier version of the Marie Kondo, does it give me joy, is if this had poop on it, would I keep it or would I trash it? So I like that one now too. It's like, this toy, like, you're done. I'm not there. It's gone. We also held a garage sale a couple weeks ago, and our family made over $1,100 just from putting out stuff that we weren't using anymore. And the kids got involved in that. And obviously some of it was bikes and stuff that's a little more high value. We're not selling, $1 pair of used socks at a time and making that kind of money. But there might be a lot of stuff in your house that then can help you free up the extra cash that you were talking about earlier in the episode. Maybe you can even organize one for your neighborhood, because there's probably also other people moving in the summer, or just in general, Americans tend to have more stuff than they need. So you might be able to get a lot of attention to your neighborhood if you organize something like that. Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back to the show. Hey, Spencer, I've heard about this free Amex Platinum card for military service members. Where can I go to learn more about this?
Great question, Jamie. I've got the Ultimate Military Credit Cards course at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. It's a 100% free email-based course, and I explain exactly how to verify your eligibility for credit card annual fee waivers with the Military Lending Act, or MLA, and the Service Member Civil Relief Act, or SCRA. The Ultimate Military Credit Cards course is a beginner's guide to travel hacking and opening up your first annual fee-waived credit card while you or your spouse serves in the U.S. military. There's no spam, no fluff, and the only emails you'll get from me are related to military credit cards. You can unsubscribe at any time, and there's zero cost to you to sign up. You can sign up right now for free at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. Again, militarymoneymanual.com/Uniform Mike Charlie 3.
And now back to the show.
One of the benefits that people probably hear about when they do their PCS finance brief is TLE or TLA. Can you just touch on a high level of how those kind of work and things that people should be looking out for if they want to take advantage of those benefits?
So for most people moving CONUS to CONUS, staying inside CONUS, you'll get the temporary living expense, TLE, and that's capped out at $290 a day. It's a mix of lodging and meals, and there's formulas on there. You can look at the DFAS website, but it's like the service member and a spouse is 100%, and then you add kids under 12 or kids over 12, it's different amounts, and then max of $290 a day. Right now, recent change is that it is limited to 21 days for CONUS to CONUS PCS. It's 7 days if you're moving outside the CONUS, so CONUS to OCONUS. And then if you're doing OCONUS back to CONUS, you get 21 days upon arrival. This is different than the temporary living allowance, TLA, is on the OCONUS side. So when you arrive OCONUS, you can get up to 60 days of lodging and per diem, so that you get the lodging expense plus meals and incidental expenses for the locality that you're arriving to. And then you also get 10 days of departure TLA. Like in my case, we're going OCONUS to CONUS this summer. So we'll get 10 days of hotel and per diem before departing. That way it gives you time to pack up your house, ship it out, and then you get a little bit of time in a hotel before, so you're not shipping up your household goods and then trying to get on the plane the next day. There's a lot of steps, between the car and all that stuff you have to do. So it gives you a little bit of buffer there to either get out of your house, clean it, and get out the door, or when you arrive to have somewhere to go before you move into the house. There's so much confusion over these two. They probably should have named them a little bit better because they're so close that they confuse people. And then also, I hear stories almost daily from people I forget what they call them in the Army. Most of the Army briefs, there's a certain term for them. And people are briefing at the Family Readiness Center or equivalent the incorrect number of days for TLE, and it's confusing people. And so I send them the link to DFAS or to the JTR and say, hey, I recommend you take this to the person that briefed you or your S1 or your finance office and show them this. You briefed me, I only get 10 days, but this says I get 21 days. Can you explain which one's correct? And spoiler alert, it's going to be the JTR. But there's so much misinformation out there about it that people get confused.
I don't blame them. The rules are changing all the time. And it was 10 days probably for 25 years.
Yep.
and then they changed it, right? And like that old crusty contractor or GS employee who's been giving the same brief, come on, man, you're not paying them enough to go update their slides from 10 days to 21.
The other thing about TLE is that you can split it, especially when you're doing the CONUS to CONUS stuff specifically, you can split it between your old and your new permanent duty station. So if you get 21 days total, you could do 7 at one, 14 at the other, or any combination of that up to 21 days total. You can also use it when you stay with family and friends. So if you have a cousin in the area and you want to stay with them, you can still get the meals and incidental expenses portion without being in a hotel. I would recommend that you take as much money as you can and make your life simple and easy, especially when it's reimbursable. So maybe that means you don't get as much of the per diem expense on the meals and incidental because you got a bigger hotel room that fits your family of 5, or you get 2 hotel rooms instead of 1. And so you got a balance of trying to make a lot of money off of this with making your life less stressful, because it's a miserable time. And that's really the root of the episode, is trying to help make it less miserable.
Yeah, and one way you can do that too is PCS Pay Advance. So you can apply to your S1 or finance in the Air Force. I think you submit a CMS case, but you can take up to 1 month's pay, and that's base pay, and BAH, I think, or just base pay. And you can get up to 1 month's base pay, interest free, and then you pay it back over 12 months. I did this once when I was a lieutenant. We were pretty strapped for cash. I think it was a good idea because it did make the PCS just a little bit less stressful. We had access to some more money. But then for every month afterwards, I remember looking at my LES and seeing that 1/12 of my pay was being deducted to pay off this loan. And I was kind of kicking myself a little bit. I don't like debt. But if you're in a pinch and the DLA is not going to cover it, the dislocation allowance, plus all the other benefits you're going to get, you might want to look at this, especially if you're just getting started in the military, especially if it's
been a rough year.
Yeah. It's a tool available to you. It's at 0% interest. You don't have to deal with like a payday loan or anything. This is just, an advance of your pay, and you'll pay it back over 12 months. And then hopefully you never have to do it again.
And earlier, Spencer, we were talking about understanding options and benefits. Another one to talk about there is how you ship your stuff. So most CONUS moves, you'll have the option to do a full shipment with TMO or GIPSO, and they'll pack up all your stuff, they'll move it, they'll deliver it and unpack it under government contract. Or you can do a partial DIDI or a partial PPM. I mentioned the personally procured move earlier. For all CONUS moves, you should almost certainly do a partial PPM. And if nothing else, you get paid for the weight of the suitcases in your car. So that's something to understand. And then you can also do a full DIDI or a full personally procured move. And under a PPM, the government will reimburse you they'll pay you as an incentive what they would pay a contract company to move that amount of weight, that amount of distance. So for example, if you're moving from like Norfolk to San Diego and you have 10,000 pounds of weight and that's under your allowance for your pay grade with dependents or whatever, say it costs them $20,000 to pay a company that, they will pay you $20,000 in this made up scenario. You rent a U-Haul, you pack it all up yourself, you pay for the boxes, tape, or you hire a company to do it. So it doesn't have to be all sweat equity in this, but then you get to keep whatever is left over as profit. And I talked about a couple years ago, we have a podcast episode about how I personally made $14,000, I think it was, of profit after expenses for our last PPM. And a couple weeks ago, we decided to do another PPM, and I think we'll make around $10,000 profit from Hawaii to our CONUS location this summer. So you have options. People, again, misinformation, they'll say, oh, so-and-so briefed that we're not allowed to do a PPM to Hawaii or from Hawaii. Not true. I hear people say that, but no one's actually been able to show me any evidence or any JTR resource. And so I'd ask that you politely challenge that, question that, and look for a JTR resource if someone's giving you something that's different than what you believe your entitlement to be. And so asking questions is kind of how I would summarize the understanding your options and your benefits. If you can, get it in writing, like if you ask your S1 or finance for something, if you can send them an email, or if they have a website where you open a case with them, getting that back from them is a better way than going in and asking that face-to-face. Because then when you get to your new base, you're saying, oh, private so-and-so told me that this would be reimbursed, and they're going to say they were wrong. Like, that's not a thing, and you might be screwed.
Trust but verify, and maybe don't even trust.
And then a couple other random ones. I mentioned the TDY en route or taking leave en route. We also have an article about the circuitous travel. Spencer's got an article about that, and we've talked about that in podcast episodes. So understanding your options and your benefits, like you don't have to take the government plan for travel. When I moved from New Jersey to Hawaii, the government official plan was for me to drive cross country, drop off my car in San Diego, fly up to Northern California, and then get on a rotator. Like, I'm not doing that. That's dumb. So I took a day of leave en route so I could do my own airfare. Also, by the way, I get great points for my Amex Platinum. With Circuitous Travel, you can self-procure. You have to do the paperwork, get it added to your orders. And so then I was able to fly from Philadelphia or wherever my leave location was direct to Honolulu and cut out all the rotator, all the driving and things like that. Also, some people might like the driving, and you might have that option as well. For my situation, I'm going from a higher BH location to a lower BH location. And it's true for everyone. Your BH for your new base does not kick in until the day the service member arrives there. So not only am I going to be making a TDY pay for my TDY en route portion, I'm also going to be still making Hawaii BH for the whole time I'm at training on my way to my new duty station. So as you can see, if you do a little bit of research and understand your benefits, it can really start to stack up where you have a plan for money to where financially, at least, it's not as stressful. Obviously, me being away from my family for another 2.5 months is not ideal, but that's part of the job sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah, when we PCS from Abu Dhabi, UAE to Hawaii, the plan was like 28 hours of straight travel, Abu Dhabi to Charles de Gaulle and Paris, then to DFW, then to Hawaii. And I was just like, no, we're not going to do that. So we ended up flying to Zurich. We got to spend some time in Switzerland. We flew out of Geneva up to Edinburgh. Then we flew down to London, flew over to Calgary, got to check out Banff National Park in Canada. And then finally, we ended up in Vancouver and then hopped over to Hawaii, where we were welcomed with the great Aloha spirit by Jamie himself. Well, it was probably one of our best circuitous travel trips. And I think we were able to get most of that reimbursed just because the airfare was so expensive from Abu Dhabi to Hawaii. But yeah, I added a lot of leave there too. And so we were able to check out a lot of great spots and get a lot of it reimbursed on our way over to Hawaii.
Military life is stressful. Talking about leave, Spencer, is that it's often hard for people to take leave during their assignment. And so a lot of times between assignments is a prime option to take maybe a chunk, 2-3 weeks of leave or something, depending on your job. It might be very challenging to get that type of time off all in one chunk during your assignment, but between assignments, it's usually a little easier to do that. So don't forget to take care of your family, re-up some of those connections with your kids, with your spouse on the way. And just, it's teamwork. It's all about you guys working together to overcome this challenge and start a new adventure together. And my wife and I have to remind ourselves a lot, mainly I have to remind myself a lot, that we're a team and we're challenging this situation together, not me versus her during a challenging situation. And that helps. And then Spencer, the last thing I think I have as a tip is to make sure you have good inventory of your stuff, whether you're doing a full personally procured move, a partial ditty, or the government's fully packing up your stuff for you, or you're packing up your car yourself, any combination of that. Maybe walk around with a video of the house, take lots of pictures of each room. God forbid if you have a total loss of your stuff or the movers break stuff or they lose your shipment, you at least have an inventory. You can start rebuilding your life. That would be incredibly challenging, and having a little bit of logistics handled of knowing what was there will help with that. And our friend Kate Horrell has great PCS checklists on her website. We'll put those in the show notes, and some of those practical tips will help you prepare as well. For the families that are out there looking at the new Home Safe contract or whatever the new thing is for a lot of CONUS bases that I understand has been incredibly challenging, keep your head up. I'm sorry that PCS is so stinking hard. And I hope that one day we get to the point where the military doesn't make families move quite as much as we do now. In my personal opinion, it's a lot. And that's one of the main drivers, I think, for people choosing not to stay in, because you have no control over where you live. It's hard on the spouse's job. It's hard on the kids changing schools. It's hard when kids are getting to high school age and all these things that add up. And so hopefully some of these tips today make it a little bit easier to handle some of the practical and the tangible things and the financial side of moving. Remember, you're not alone in this. You have friends, family. Reach out to your support network. and get help if you need it. You should never be at a new base unloading a U-Haul by yourself. Hopefully you have a sponsor or someone to reach out to that can help you, give you tips on where to live and tips on where to avoid and things like that. But it doesn't always work out like that. I've showed up at a new base knowing that I couldn't get in the building and I didn't have a sponsor to let me in on the first day, and I had no help. But we all just kind of figure it out sometimes, as crappy as that is.
Hey, some great tips and tricks there, Jamie. Thank you for sharing that with your 16 years and coming up on your 7th PCS. Just as a reminder, save up that cash, prepare the family, make sure your paperwork is organized, stay on top of getting your orders, understand your TLA benefits, always reference the JTR. Don't just trust what Airman Schnuffy tells you at finance or even in a CMS case, because remember who's closing out those CMS cases. Take your DLA advance. There's no reason not to. Look at using a PCS pay advance if you absolutely have to, but remember, you're going to have to pay that back. It's not free money. Finally, use the opportunity to take some leave. I think there's way too many people out there with huge leave balances, and a PCS is a great time to tack on some leave and give your family a little break, and maybe take some on the front half, take some when you arrive at your new station, and get acclimated to your new environment. Start learning, where all the parks are, where the good restaurants are, and just understand become comfortable in your new environment. That's all for now. We'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.